Hi, my name is Bruce Bolger, and I'm the founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. And we put on these YouTube shows pretty much every month to focus on key trends in the industry, what is affecting the incentive, engagement, rewards and recognition business. And we like to speak with people at the front lines who really see what's going on. So as you can see, we've got people from the front lines to share what's going on. Jaki Baskow, she's head of leading talent agent. Oh, we got Greg Bogue. Thank you, Greg. And we'll get to you in a second, Greg. Jaki Baskow, she's principal of Las Vegas Talent Bureau, and she has been doing this for more years than she'll admit. So she can really share with us the changes in meetings over the years. We have Eric Bogue, he's Vice President of Experience at Maritz. Who could be more appropriate to discuss meetings experiences than Eric? Andrea Doyle, who got us into this in a way. Andrea Doyle, she's executive editor of Skift Meetings, and she had published an article. We both published articles around the same time, our companies, without knowing it, saying, hey, folks, we've got to really rethink meetings because we're all going back to the same thing. But that's what we're here to discuss, and you don't have to agree with it. And then we have Marc Matthews. He's founder of Pulse Experiential Travel. And we have him here because he's probably the world leader in individual travel worldwide. And we do want individual travel as part of incentive travel. And then finally, Melissa Van Dyke, Senior Vice President of Creative Group. Anybody in the industry just about knows her because before that she was with the IRF and did a great job there as well. So just a quick little piece of housekeeping. This event today is sponsored by an incentive company, Partners for Incentives, and they sell only through resellers. They have a really unique model. And then finally, just remember, we're the how-to organization for engagement, rewards, and recognition, total rewards. We give away a lot of stuff. So if you go to our website, you'll see you can get a complete library of expertise, a lot of it shared with people like the people today. So I'm going to stop this share now. And Andrea, I'm going to start with you because, folks, what we're here today to talk about is, and again, you do not have to agree with me. Push back if you don't. But my feeling is that we've got to change the meeting format. That COVID, I can now get so much great content. I can see any keynote speaker I want. I can see any panelists I want online anytime I want. And then we have this instance of more and more companies are really looking at how they can reduce their carbon footprint. And Salesforce, one of the leading companies in the world, is very clear in their sustainability report. Face-to-face meetings are really important, but they'd better be important or they're going to cut them. So, Andrea, what do you think about this whole concept? First off, am I right that everyone's just kind of gone back to the same general formats for the most part? I could be wrong, and that there's a big focus on going right back to what we did. In fact, I think you even had a term for it a year and a half ago. You had come up with an acronym, do what we've always done, something like that.
No, no, if you can do it on Zoom, do not do it in the room.
Well, that
But
was
I,
another one. So you had two of them, and that was one. And the other one was that we really have to rethink. That's what I heard.
but
But
if
tell,
you ask my kids, they say I talk in fortune cookies, so I have lots of little sayings.
well, good.
But I was surprised the title of this webinar had to do with COVID because I think that is so far in our past, it's not even a thought anymore. So I'll start with that. And, there's a lot of geopolitical uncertainty in the world right now, and that's going to make it even worse when it comes to how many events an attendee goes to. They're going to be really, really discerning. And the days of going to an event just to go to the event, they're over. So you have to give people a really, really credible reason for attending, and they need to know they're going to get something at that event they're not going to get anywhere else.
So we're going to get into that. Eric, since I have not spoken with you about this, and I have with Melissa and Jackie, what's your take on it? Can we just
So,
do the same old thing?
um, Greg,
Greg, I'm sorry. Did I call you Eric?
you did.
I'm sorry.
No
Greg.
problem. Actually, I think, yes, people have not stepped outside of the model. I think we're living in a high school metaphor model for events forever. But the thing that I would say, Andrea, going back to the pandemic, is the key thing that I think that changed in the pandemic is the way people have viewed their time. And what is causing them to not attend is because they're wasting their time. And perhaps if we started thinking about designing their time instead of just experiences, we might get more interest if we made it worth their time. So, it's kind of an interesting thing. Pandemic, yes, kind of historical element now, but I really do think time and the way that we viewed it shifted during the pandemic.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I feel like where people have headed is they don't really want, and I think we do see this in our work. It's subtle for some clients and it's substantial for others, that it's less about having a talking head. It's kind of moving from talking head to story led, right? For fortune cookie words there. From talking head to more story led and immersive experiences. And for some clients, that's subtle, right? It might just be adding in Q&A or some type of collaboration there with the speaker. But that might even be all the way to, timed ceviche drops from when the CEO is speaking so that he can talk about the big game that he had just, the big fish that he just caught as part of his story, or, drum bands and pop-ups. So depending on what's substantial and what's kind of subtle for a client, I do see clients really starting either subtly or substantially moving into what is a more story-led versus talking head approach.
So, Jackie, you would be at the front lines of this in a way because you're an agent and you've got talents, you've got clients constantly booking you for talent. Now, you really helped us this last year because you arranged 16 different corporate speakers for our shows. And
Wow.
they had great advice. They all had great advice. And it was all around authenticity. And every single speaker, Jackie, said to us, they don't want to be on the stage as much. They want to get off the stage. They want to be with the people. Do you see clients yet moving in that direction? Um, Mike May I guess that's Bright
Bright
Spot.
spot.
He made the point we should go 80-20 in collaboration, 20% on stage, 80% people getting together. I don't think that's happening yet, but what are you seeing, Jackie?
I think it all depends on the crowd and the keynote. I think we need to make it about our audience, our employees. I used to have 24 employees, and we need to make it about them. What, like everybody in the group was saying, why should they come to this meeting? I do a big real estate meeting every year, and I hired a guy named Alex Dowis that we're managing from America's Got Talent. He's on the stage and he's not just a painter, but he paints the message of the meeting and creates a message in LED lights, which is really interesting. And we grab people's attention. And it opens with the message of what you're trying to create or the theme of your meeting for that week. But people want to be engaged. They don't want to see the same old thing. And I have the drummers and the violinists and all that stuff, but I'm always looking for new things, even with my speakers. I think that speakers, you just can't stick somebody up on stage. I know people like interaction, they love people. We like to do breakout meetings where people and maybe even the speaker speaks and comes out and creates different things for the groups. So they leave with something and take home some information, but educational information.
So, in other words, what we learned when we talked with all those folks, they had all sorts of ideas of how they could facilitate meetings rather than just speak. So we're going to get into more of that in a minute. Marc, you're not in the group meeting business, and folks, you can't see Marc Matthews. He has a technical issue there, or either that or he's in Tahiti right now, and the connection isn't good. Could be one of those. But anyway, Marc, you are in the business of very small group retreat meetings and also individual travel. A lot of the talk, in fact, in Andrea's publication and others, there's a lot of talk about the changing of venues, that people are getting more interested in secondary cities, not necessarily going to Miami, New York, and LA or Vegas, but trying different cities. And then authenticity is something we keep hearing about. In fact, I recently saw something in some magazine guy said, authenticity, that's dead already. That fad of authenticity, gosh, it's another buzzword, but actually, Marc, I think it's actually kind of real. What do you think?
Well, it's very real. And getting back to Andrea's initial comment about the COVID being gone, and Greg's comments about using time wisely, that's very, very critical these days. People had a taste of individual travel during the pandemic when they couldn't travel as groups. And it's like when everybody had to work remotely and now trying to pry them back into the office space. So tastes have changed. People want to do things. They want to have meaningful meetings. They want to have significant meetings. They're not going to waste their time, but they also want that authentic experience. They want that give back. They want that sustainability. We're seeing a lot of team building things where they're getting out and they're working with local tribes or local people or something of that nature to give back to the local community wherever they're having their meetings. So it's not just about sitting back in a meeting hall and listening to a keynote, but it's actually getting together, having a meaningful time, having a meaningful conversation, and then having a meaningful effort experience in the local area.
And we're
What
going to get
Marc
into
said
that
is
more.
key, meaningful meetings. That's what it's all about.
Exactly.
So, well, Andrea, back to you. Are you seeing any changes really in format? And I don't want to knock our dear friends at IMEX and IRF and SITE. They're all, very important to us. But I look at their agendas, it looks to me like the same old stuff, and then they'll say, like, and you guys did a really good report on IMEX, I noticed. And in fact, we featured some of that report in our publication. But and they said that they were flipping the concept of IMEX. And yet when I read the program, I didn't see any of that, but I may be wrong.
I am going to push back. I feel
Well,
like
good. That's what this is about. Push
they
back.
try lots of different things. Like they have the learning sessions off to the sides. You could sit in soft seating. You get the headphones. It's smaller education sessions. They have a room there for people who are neurodivergent and need a getaway. So I believe IMEX definitely, they walk the walk. They don't just talk the talk. So there
And what
is
are you
lots of
seeing in general? What are you seeing? And Eric, why am I going with that? Greg and Melissa, I'm going to get to you that in a second as well. What are you seeing in terms of actual change? Have you seen anybody go yet to the 20/80 rule? 20% on stage, 80% collaboration, if indeed that's the way to go. Are you seeing any big
Yeah, like I
changes
say, it's
generally?
from subtle to substantial, right? I feel like every client, to your point, Andrea, I feel like post-pandemic, everybody re-looked and said, how much change can our attendees absorb, right? Because we have an expectation. If I've been to the event in the past, I have some level of mental model, right, of what I'm stepping into. But what can we do to make it more engaging? And we architect their time to make it worth their while. And we already know it's not about putting the talking head on stage. It's about, like I said, that story-led immersive experiences. But what that means to an individual client can vary. And yes, we've had some clients move to completely collaborative, doing away with the general session, having all interactive pop-up, almost like trade show experiences, right? Where you have little learning pods. Yeah, that's one approach. If it's right for the audience, back to Greg, if architecting their time and moving the people that you want to move your business, if that makes sense for them, but that's not right for every audience, right? So I think that's where my viewpoint is we just have to get really a lot smarter about being very intentional in how we design, which I know Greg and Andrea, you've got a lot of experience in.
Well, Melissa, the last time that you were on the show, when we first did this, you made the point that, again, post-COVID, people were just happy to get together again. They were
Sure.
just happy to do the meeting again. So that the early first meetings after COVID were not revolutionary. They
Yeah.
tended to be, let's do the same thing because we were all happy to get back. But
Mm-hmm.
now, Greg, getting to you, you've been in this business a long time. And you also know that you have to be respectful for your clients and you have to go where they're ready to go, right? But I have a feeling that you're a pretty direct person when you want to be. If you had your druthers, what would you be telling your clients about how they should really be thinking about their motivational event formats today? What would you do to blow it up, if at all?
I would tell them to stop wasting our time together doing things that we can easily do when we're apart. Find a purpose for the event, for the meeting, for the gathering. And I don't mean a theme or anything. I mean purpose. And I remember as a kid, we had zoysia grass on our front lawn. And my dad told me I had to thatch the lawn with a thatching rake. Do you know how much work that is?
I've been there. We shared dads.
We need to tell our clients to start thatching their agendas and get stuff out. Stop doing stupid stuff. I'm sorry, well, stupid stuff. Sorry. Unpurpose-led stuff. Let's call it that. But we really need to do that. I mean, making people get up at 7 a.m. for breakfast? No. No.
For wellness.
No.
No sleep.
I'm working on a story right now about wellness washing. No one wants to go to yoga at 7 when you have a day of meetings and sessions.
No.
And it shouldn't be a box you just check off to say, oh yeah, wellness, check. Team building, check. It has to be more intentional, like you said, Melissa.
Yeah, and to Greg's point about freeing up some time in the agenda, and we do see that a lot. One, it's like it can be a cost savings. If you're not over architecting people's time, it can be a cost savings to free up some time in the agenda so that people can connect, so that they're finding their tribe. I think we talked about this a little bit in the last time I was on, finding that third place, right? Finding my tribe while I'm there with these people at this place and time at this event. I want to get to know them. I want to have relationships that I can walk away on the other side with and build on. And finding that third place, that third community outside of my work and my home, that's what events are becoming. And you've got to free up time or create collaboration and opportunity for people to connect to make that happen.
And that's the magic of face-to-face.
And don't you think that planners are uneasy in that space, knowing, oh my God, I got to fill up every minute, or
it has to be unplanned.
Yeah.
That's a wild card. They're not used to that. It's risky business.
Well, yes, and I don't think that it's attendees are demanding it more and more. They're like, I'm trying to do my full-time job and be at this event. It's 24/7 all the time. I need some free time just to get caught up. I mean, that's kind of the reality post-COVID, right?
And if planners don't create their agendas that way, people just leave, and that's even worse.
And they do leave.
Absolutely.
So Jaki, something that was really interesting, one of our speakers, a gentleman named Eric Bowles, and he's a very successful corporate speaker, and he had his day in the sun as a football player in New York with the Jets for a couple of years. And he had a really good advice that I don't think anybody follows. He said he doesn't understand why companies hold all these meetings with speakers and panelists, people sitting in an auditorium, when, to your point, Melissa, they really want to get to know each other, and you can't get to know each other in an auditorium very easily. And then second, he made a point. He says companies, they're getting people from all over the country and the world from their organization. This should be an opportunity, to your point, Greg, to make it purposeful. For instance, a lot of companies have real issues. A cycle, like maybe there's silos that are really hurting them. Maybe they're organizational challenges. Maybe there are different types of opportunities that the company isn't taking advantage of. Eric said, and he's a terrific speaker, Jaki, it looks like to me. But he said, why don't you hold your meetings, Greg, exactly to what you said, to fulfill a specific purpose? In other words, don't just bring him in for a national sales meeting. Use it to, isn't that what he said, Jaki?
Yes, he did. And, and it might be a little bit old school meets new school. I'm all about face to face and everybody getting to know each other. You can sit in the same room with your peers and not know anything about them for years. A lot of my employees I always made sure that we did interaction together. I'll give you an example, and I'm sure a lot of you have used it, like Hello World, when people went to register and they took a picture and they painted something on their arms, like, somebody had cancer free on there, somebody had rescue animals. And then at the end of the meeting, they had everybody's pictures up on the walls. And you looked and you saw things about people, you got to know them. It's like those boards you put out where, if I could, I would. And people would put like a little wish board outside the meeting room. And I know it sounds a little hokey, but people love it. They want to know about you. They want to know about, what are you doing in your department? Can I tell you a little bit about me? Because they're important.
Can I build on that too, just to say,
Please.
people want to know about you, and more so than what LinkedIn can tell you. there was a time when, yeah, I needed business cards. I needed something to tell you generally about who I am, but that's all out on LinkedIn, right? There's a lot of places where you can find out about who I am and what my job is.
Yeah.
I want to get to know you, right? And that's where you have, I love like Jabberyak, what they do. It's you have your main interest, and it's a button or it's on your badge, and it tells you, I love poetry and powerlifting, and it gives you a reason to get to know the person behind just the job title and the name. And Greg, back to your purpose, if it's connection that we're looking for, we've got to find ways to get away from just giving people their name and their title and you all figure it out, but giving them something to connect on a more individual and human level.
It's funny
Melissa,
because, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Bruce. I just want to say one thing, and I don't mean to use people's names or whatever, but in this real estate meeting that I do every year, nobody knows who the keynote speakers are. Nobody knows who the entertainment is or what the agenda. They come there. And it's a surprise. Like one of the speakers we had, Nick Santamatasto, he has no arms, no legs. He gets there and he talks about like, how many of you are angry out there? What are you grateful for? At the very end, everybody's taking deep breaths and releasing all their stress, and people are hugging each other. It's sort of like a camaraderie, and it's been an experience. So they didn't just hire a keynote speaker to hear about him. He talks all about everybody in the audience. And I think that meetings have to change a bit because, I mean, and I own a speakers bureau and a talent agency. I try to find different things that people are going to say, oh my God, do you remember that meeting we went to 5 years ago? It was amazing. And we used to do that when I did IBM Golden Circle for 4 years. And everything we did was different because they'd seen everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's a thought pattern. It's not just one idea. You get a creative team together and figure out what's my next meeting. Maybe you don't tell them who your keynote speakers are. You don't tell them what it is. The charitable events, going out, everybody bringing a piece of clothing and going out and making a lunch for homeless people and giving a piece of clothing. They feel worthy and they feel like they did something in a group.
And when you do that together with your colleagues, it brings you even closer.
Well, and that's my segue to Marc. Thank you. Beautifully set up. Marc, you wrote an article or I guess we interviewed you, I forget which, in RRN a couple of weeks ago, in which you basically said that a short escape from a destination is actually not only a great way for people to share an authentic experience, but also it's CSR, corporate social responsibility. Frankly, I don't believe in corporate, so I don't think companies have a social responsibility per se, but it's certainly sustainability, right? It's this concept of helping out the local community. So is that something that you're seeing more of where companies are, usually the concept is your CSR program is you box up a bunch of things in the conference room and then everybody, takes some pictures, we're all happy and we leave. Your concept in that article is why don't we take them, like you said, a Native American tribal village outside of Vegas or something, and actually meet with the local tribe and discuss what their issues are and find common ground and whatnot and break bread together. Is that a form of also giving back that's more meaningful?
Yes, it's very real, and it kind of ties in everything that's been discussed here in this call about having more meaningful meetings. They're smaller in size, they're more impactful. The people who are attending are there with a purpose, of going over a specific topic to make it relevant. Well, they want to keep that relevance in the whole experience. They're going out to these local neighborhoods where they are making a difference. The local economy is being directly affected. The welfare of not just an individual, or when you do a box in a room and you give it away, you don't see who you're impacting. You don't see where that box is going. Now you're out in the community and, hey, I'm spending money. I'm buying this lady's tortillas. I'm buying this guy's hats. And you're directly affecting the local economy and the people that live there. And you see the impact. And that is, it's critical. It's very impactful. And yeah, that whole feeling of, yes, we've done something and we've done it together, but we've also done it individually. It was my transaction with that individual, or hey, our group went into this town and this is what I did to make a change in somebody's life.
Mark, you're breaking up. So I think you finished your thought and hopefully you'll be back. Greg, let's get specific if we
Very
can.
meaningful.
First off, I fully, it doesn't matter whether I agree with you or not, but I do. So could you be a little bit specific?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, Mark. I hope it's not on my end. Greg, be a little bit more specific. If you were going to really sit down with a client and said, Greg, I'm going to leave it to you. You're a genius at that. You've been doing it for years. I want to shake it up. What process would you take that client through to help make that meeting more purposeful, meaningful, and memorable?
Yeah, Bruce, thanks for that question. I'm very, very committed to helping clients find purpose for their event or their meeting or their gathering. And we very specifically look for one word that captures the essence of what they're trying to accomplish. And I would take them through a bit of a process to really find what that word means. I mean, certainly their brand stands for something. That's part of what we have to consider. But as we think about an event, what is the essence of what they're trying to do? And we've had clients use a variety of different words. Aha moments. That's 2 words. I let them do that. But creating aha moments. Now, if you have that as your purpose, that changes your breakout sessions. You can't have boring, stale breakouts, right? So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is I would have them define at least probably 3 to 5 business outcomes, because I think measurement starts at design. So 5 business outcomes. What are they trying to accomplish? Be specific. How might I measure that? And then I would ask them to convert those business outcomes into what guest impressions they want their guests to leave with. And I feel like the trifecta of purpose, business outcomes, and guest impressions sets a foundation for effective design. So that's what I would do.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So, Melissa, your viewpoint on that then, how do you help guide your clients to start with purpose rather than, oh, we're just holding an event, how can we get through the day, right?
Yeah. And it's asking the right questions, back to what Greg was saying, and having some of that brainstorming. I'll say what we found most effective is really just getting clients to talk about, you're bringing these people together for a reason at this moment in time. You want them to leave this moment in time together different than they came in. What do you want them to think, feel, and do differently on the other side of the event? Because then we can start looking at, to Greg's point, from a measurement standpoint, did they think, feel, or do something different walking out of the event? That gives us more meaningful measurement as well. And we've got to start using the F word a little bit more in meetings as well. What do you want them to feel, right? So, and I use the example of, if you've got an incentive travel program, a lot of times it's like, oh, I want them to think that, that they're top performer. I want them to feel rewarded. And I want them to do is I want them to go sell more, right? That's typically what you'd hear. But when you really start to dig into it, it can be things like, oh, I want them to think we're a tech savvy company. Okay, well then now we're using registration and we're using iPads at registration. It's a different experience there. Or I want them to feel like they're part of a family. Wonderful. Now we're leaning into Ohana if we're in Hawaii, or some of those types of concepts and how we design. Or I want them to find their tribe so that they can extend these relationships after amongst their top performers, when I'm breaking that final night up into smaller groups. So when you really start to work with people who are on the ground planning, and like, what do you think, what do you want these people at this point in time to think, feel, and do differently on the other side of the event? It's a fun exercise first, but it gives you a lot more tangibility to design to Greg's point. It gets you to the essence of the purpose.
So, Andrea, your publication does a lot of surveys and you're out talking with people a lot. And Greg, I think, made the point that, if people aren't going to attend, if it's not meaningful. Now, look, in an employee program, they got to go, right? And whether they like it or not. But in a channel program, right, they don't have to come, right?
Right.
If you're selling through resellers, those ladies and men, no, I'm not going to go. Are you noticing that there are more people like me that have, because again, I can afford, I don't have to go to meetings. If I don't want to go to a meeting, I won't. And I won't go to a meeting where I'm sitting in an auditorium all day. Just won't do it. I have ADHD perhaps. But am I alone? Or are there a lot more? And I think Greg alluded to it, that there are a lot of people now that really, they don't want to get up at 5 in the morning to fly to a place where
Right.
they're sitting all day in meetings and there are all these people they want to meet and they can only meet them at lunch and dinner or at this cocktail party. Am I the only one, or are attendees changing their expectations at meetings?
They're definitely changing their expectations. And for all the reasons we just said, you have to give them a reason to attend and let them feel as if they don't, they're going to miss something out. They're not going to find their tribe. They're not going to figure out what the company's purpose is. So it has to be something that they know that if they don't attend, they're going to be at a disadvantage. And especially given the climate we're living now, that meetings are starting to compress, you really have to, it's more important than ever.
Hold on. What's that now? Meeting, what are you saying about meetings starting to compress?
Just
Shorter?
with the geopolitics and international attendees, it's going to be tougher for them to come to US based meetings. I mean, I published a story today that I thought was really interesting about an association from in the sports realm, and they were having a meeting in Seattle. 40% of their members are Canadians, so they said we will not travel to the US.
I
So
read
what
that.
that association is doing now is having a secondary meeting in Vancouver parallel. So the planner has twice the work and also a virtual component. So things, right now things are changing, and we just have to be ready for the changes. This isn't an industry that anything's ever static though, is it?
Well, thank heavens. Jackie, in your case, as you know, when you get a keynote speaker or a famous person, a lot of times they just want to get up on the stage. You're paying them $25,000 and they just want to get up on that stage, do their shtick, maybe do a book signing and get the heck out of there. But isn't it really changing? Isn't it now? Look, if I'm going to meet I used to run big trade shows, and a big thing to
Yeah,
do was to get a baseball player. Like, if we got Derek Jeter, let me tell you, we had a line out the door, right? So, and people wanted to meet, but you know what? They didn't really get to meet Derek because Derek was sitting at the booth signing books, right? Don't people want to meet these celebrities? Don't they want to get to know them if they can?
absolutely. I mean, I'm all about creating magical, memorable moments, but relaying your message. If you have like a Kevin Costner, like Kevin does like a Q&A, or we just had Shaquille O'Neal, you really hear about him. He's all about paying it forward, like picking up people's tabs in Walmart in the middle of the night and things like that. I always ask my speakers, can we do interactive sessions? Can we put microphones in the audience so they can talk to you, so they can feel the session and know a little bit more about you? And I just think that, people want more, like you're saying, Bruce. Afterwards, he came and he spun music as a DJ in our event
But
that evening. So people got to like, ask him questions. Can you play a song? You know, I do a lot of meet and greet things. We just did something a couple weeks ago. I had Jay Leno come in and do a meet and greet. Well, people got to talk to him. They got to touch him. It wasn't just like, let's take a quick picture. I made it so people interacted with him the whole 2 hours that he was there. Him, and I also had Marie Osmond there. And people loved it. She sat and talked to people about their problems and this and that. We got letters, and my client got letters like, that was the best cocktail party we ever went to and the best trade show. They just want to touch them and take something home with them. And it's how you leave them feeling.
You know, I
circle,
I used to go, yeah, please.
circling back to what you said about Derek Jeter, who is great, but it's no coincidence that the Savannah Bananas are as popular as they are now because it's interactive, it's more hands-on, it's not someone that is on this ivory tower that's untouchable.
I think that makes a big difference. In fact, that's what people really want. They want to meet the celebrity. What's it like to be famous? They want to get a sense of that. Marc, In your experience, there's a, Greg made the point, and I think Melissa as well, or everybody's making the point. We really have to get people to want to go to meetings today. And there is an interesting trend that I'm seeing called leisure, right? If you're going on a business trip, you take an extra day. And especially, Andrea, if the meetings are getting compressed and maybe they're only 2 days, Mark, how much demand or interest do you see in this leisure concept of people going to Vegas for 2 days for their big meeting, and then the company gives select people an opportunity to do a little short escape from Vegas to, Red Rock or some cool Zion or, Paradise Valley or something. Mark, are you seeing any more interested in leisure? And I'm going to ask this of other people as well. Companies letting people tack on an extra day or two to enjoy themselves.
We are seeing that to a certain extent, and I apologize to everyone if my technology isn't up to par here, but we are seeing that to a certain extent. But even when the companies don't have that as a budgeted expense, we're seeing the individuals doing it on their own.
Yeah.
Where, hey, I'm going to this meeting, but yeah, I want to stay an extra couple days. I don't feel like just flying out and flying right back. They want to do something in addition. And that's where the customization that's associated with our individual and small group travel, it's a lot easier for them. Uh, Groups are larger in size, and that individual customization is a little bit more difficult in that platform. But we are seeing quite a bit of it in our space.
Building upon that, Hilton did a survey that was released a few months ago, and they call it the meeting maximizer. So it's someone that comes in early or stays late, attends a meeting. And since so many people are digital nomads, they could go to work in the destination, taking advantage of the location. And just talking about fortune cookies, the other thing that report talked about were froligs, friends who are colleagues.
Well, there you go. Gosh, you're really good at setting up segues. You ought to go on TV, Greg, because this is exactly what I was going to ask Greg, and you too, Melissa. Most companies I have worked for have silos. And most companies, those silos can actually be pretty bad. They can cause a lot of problems. It seems to me, and I think, Melissa, you alluded to this, that a meeting is a great opportunity to challenge silos, isn't it? Do you think that's something, Greg, that companies should really strategically think about? Gee, how can I really make sure that the people in sales understand marketing, understand HR, understand what the people in administration do, and get people more aligned? Is that, do you think, a worthy objective of a meeting today, Greg? And you're on mute.
I was I was waiting for Melissa to take this one.
Oh, well, I'll stick it to you and then Melissa.
Yeah, no, I would say absolutely. So we also know, back to Andrea's point, that we have more and more digital workers, more and more virtual workers. So there's more and more silos. We used to just treat them organizationally, even when we were sitting in the same building. Now we have this compounded problem of people sitting all over the country doing the same job and sitting within the same job family, right? So there's this concept of virtual distance, and we know there are absolutely times in the growth of an organization and in the growth of a project or a program where people really do have to be together face to face to solve problems, to innovate, right? To talk about the difficult parts of a job or when you're hitting roadblocks. So there's actually data around virtual distance that tells us when we need, from a business standpoint, to bring people together face to face to solve problems. It just works better, right? But then it's also looking across all of your meetings architecture as an organization and saying, are we bringing people together at the right times as our business is changing, and every business is changing, right? To have the right conversations to drive the business forward. So yeah, I think not only is it typically like we bring people face to face together to head toward the business purpose, but right now more so than ever with that constant, with virtual distance growing and more organizations needing people to come together to solve and innovate.
Well, that I love. So, Greg, on that note, And this gets back to what Eric Bowles told us. Isn't a corporate meeting a great opportunity to collaborate and innovate? Isn't
I,
that? Go ahead.
absolutely. And I think I think there's a new category of events that's on the horizon, and they're culture events, right? I mean, one of the things I don't think you can do very well digitally is build rich culture.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering why we don't embrace culture events as an idea. Oh, my lights just went off.
Well, we still see you. You're good.
Um, to me, that would be a very, very great way of driving the organization forward. I mean, there's tons of research on remote workers being disconnected and people not being engaged, all sorts of things. We should be, as an industry, we should have a purpose, a plan around culture and culture building events. That's what I think.
Well, by the way, that is actually that's a headline to me, Greg, because right now the whole issue is what is a North Star of an organization, right? Is the North Star profits or is the North Star purpose? And I think we're really moving because profits isn't a very smart North Star. And I'll give you an example. The Mandarin Hotel in Miami, you might have been there. They are now tearing down that it's a beautiful hotel on Brickell Key there or on Brickell Island or whatever. They're tearing it down and they're going to put up two Mandarins. Well, guess what? It's going to take 7 years. They're not going to make a dime on that land for 7 years, right? So they have a purpose that's obviously not the best thing for shareholders, right? Shareholders want their money now, they say. But no, the shareholders are patient because they know the Mandarin brand. So, Greg, your whole point of making purpose uh, I think really has a double meaning there because it's a great culture is really the reflection of purpose, isn't it? Melissa, what is your take on? I love that idea of really using your meeting strategically to build culture.
Yeah, and to pull your business goals and purpose forward, right? We were talking about CSR a little bit earlier, and that can even be in how we architect the meeting from the ground up from a purpose perspective, right? So we want everyone to know what our culture is. And I think CSR, as we're talking about purpose, fits in that frame because we're moving away from just checking a box to it being more around the concept of kind of leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
And there are programs we're doing now. For example, there's one here in Chicago, and it was built from the ground up in LEED certified buildings with all minority owned and women owned businesses here in the Chicagoland area. And that was the purpose and the culture of the organization that they wanted to pull forward. It wasn't an agenda item, right? It was architected into everything that this event was. And what I loved so much about it is not only was it obviously a great event for the attendees, but we got the opportunity to raise the bar for those small businesses, teach them how to engage with the meetings and events business, from legal to communications to compliance to how do you do this. So you're leaving this legacy with attendees of this great DEI sustainable event, but you're also kind of raising the watermark in the community, back to what Marc Matthews was talking about, for these small businesses and how they can engage with the meetings and events industry, right? So it's cultural, but it's not just about necessarily only bringing people together. It's about how do you architect that into everything that you're doing for the event.
I
It's
noticed.
not just purposeful, but it's impactful.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that I've been noticing, Melissa, is that in terms of the way companies are organizing the time of people, though, I haven't seen much of a change of that yet. I still see, but this is why I'm asking. Maybe, you guys are doing this every day. I just watch. It still seems to me we're in that 20/80. We're still in the 20%, or 80% panel discussions, talk, and 20% collaboration. Are you folks, am I wrong? Or are we beginning to see a change where maybe there's more time where people are really working together and where the speaker is out with them? Is that 80/20 rule still 80 stage, or are you guys seeing a change?
I don't think it's just about speakers. I say it's story led experiences. And yes, a lot of times you're always going to have a speaker, and how you engage that speaker is one component of it. But in almost every touch point along the attendee journey, we're talking about activations and what are they seeing and what are they thinking. And so it's about that entire attendee journey, not just because obviously you're going to have some level of content that you have to, like pop-ups, pop-up activations at events in general are having a moment, and they will, in my opinion, ongoing. And Greg, you're probably seeing this quite, but what is a pop-up and how do you use them and where do you put them and how do you engage speakers with them? That's all a part of creating interactivity other than just everybody sit and watch the speaker.
Right.
So what's a pop-up for those who don't know in our audience?
So just a pop-up activation at an event. And it's the difference between having a speaker on stage talking about something, and it's about breaking into small groups and having everybody around in the auditorium experiencing, touching, tasting, smelling, building together, right? Activations within a ballroom while the speaker is engaged with you. And there's all kinds of examples of it, but
Well, you in the last show, you had also mentioned a three-dimensional format. I think you'd mentioned
oh
that.
yeah, yeah, looking at a ballroom, not just from speaker two-dimensional, but three-dimensional. So projection mapping on the ceiling and around. But pop-ups in specific are what are the like literal areas carved out at events where you have an experience, right? And that could be everything from you're interacting with the product itself, if you're selling a new product, to you're interacting with colleagues around solving a problem or a puzzle. To having your CEOs and your leadership team at different places and having conversation. I mean, there's the concept of pop-up and activations at events, I think is a really, again, having a moment. Greg, are you seeing the same thing? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, actually, and one that I thought that was just fabulous. And Jackie, this goes to something that you made a comment about. Keynote speaker comes up and does his thing or her thing, and then 2 hours later shows up on the trade show floor on a little bitty riser with a microphone and having a dialogue with whoever happened to be by. I loved that. It was so cool. Neat little pop-up, and it just kind of spontaneously happened with this one. I love that. I thought that was really fascinating. So here they are, having this spontaneous dialogue in the middle of a trade show floor. Fabulous idea.
And I bet attendees will remember that more so than what the speaker said from the main stage.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
Well,
I'll tell you
Jackie,
something pretty fun we just did. We just had a rock star speaker, and his name is Marvelous Marc. And everybody comes out, and they had a sponsor that did the drumsticks. So everybody had the drumsticks, and they're getting that energy and making the noise. So he talks about, what makes your company different, like a band like Kiss. Well, later on in the evening, I had Gene Simmons from Kiss do a meet and greet at their cocktail party. So, creating fun, whether it's having an impressionist in the room and everybody finds a piece of paper and they start singing We Are the World with the singer on the stage, it's all about uniting everybody together and bringing everybody together, especially in a morning meeting, waking everybody up, giving them an experience. And later on that night, they're talking about, wasn't that a great day today? And also what they learned about the company or the new message that the company was trying to do.
boy, this meeting is going so quick, guys. We're getting toward the end here. Andrea, you guys just did a special report on on developments in convention centers, hotels, and whatnot. And some of the trends that came out of that I found interesting. Obviously, authentic, it was ringing true. But my question to you, are you seeing, is there a threat in an interesting way to some of the traditional meeting formats that hotels and convention center have? Because if we move to a much more interactive approach, will that old auditorium, look, we still need an auditorium. Like Melissa, you guys have done some amazing events, I know, where you have everybody up there and LED lights and music and everybody walks out dazzled. But if you're doing a program that's 80% collaboration, do we need as much auditorium space? And I love the idea of pop-ups. or mini trade shows. You know, in other words, a company could have a trade show. The sales manager could have a table. Here's what we do in sales, the marketing people. And then everybody can walk around and get, oh, gee, I didn't realize what you guys are doing. Could this, Andrea, in a sense, change potentially the demands of meeting room designs in the future? If we're going,
Absolutely. And if you see the way hotels are being renovated, it's natural light, it's soft seating, it's lots of breakout space. So they're following the trend for sure.
and so Melissa, you see this as well, that in other words, I'm wrong, that companies are changing, that
Yeah,
uh,
for example, the last two very large all employee meetings that we did, there was almost like a trade show component with all of these pop-ups and with little activations on almost like a trade show floor and you're interacting with the brand, you're interacting with the product. Now, this is employees, right? This isn't customers, this is employees, and they're getting a chance to connect all over what is really like a trade show floor with all of these activations with ball pits and virtual reality, and all of those things are on what traditionally would have been considered a trade show floor or would have just been general meeting space, right?
so Mark, Melissa coined this term "froligs." We're coming up with some cute new things today.
That's
What?
That was
Hilton.
Andrea.
Oh,
And
Andrea.
that
So,
wasn't Andrea, that was Hilton.
oh, all right. Well, thank you, Hilton. Mark, I think they make a really good point about that because if you leave an event with new friends, that's very important. In fact, loneliness is a huge problem today. I'm reading. There's an organization called Economics of Mutuality. They're actually all about stakeholder capitalism, but they're very, very big into addressing loneliness. It's an organization that was created by Mars, the candy folks. So, Mark, are you noticing that that when people go off on these retreats outside of the conference center, if they're going off in Costa Rica and going into a village and having a meeting, out in a local village, eating the local food, and everybody's sitting together, and maybe there's a local band playing local music. Um, do you notice that that creates a dynamic that you can't necessarily do in a meeting room?
Oh, absolutely. When people get out and they're in the environment and they're outside of the box and it's a new experience and everyone is experiencing something different, then they all come together because they're all interacting and experiencing something different, but they're sharing those feelings. They're sharing how impactful it is. And oh, isn't this cool? And hey, how about this? Or if they're wandering around a village, they're getting together in groups. Nobody's just going off by themselves. They naturally kind of pair up, and if they're riding in a bus to get there, or however they're communicating, they're interacting. The space actually forces it, makes them do that versus sitting somewhere where they can kind of be alone in a group.
So
When
we're
they're out
getting near the end
experiencing
here.
experience, they have to get involved.
So, Andrea, I did cut you off on that other question, and this kind of applies to all of you, and then there'll be one last question. Andrea, your report was indicating that there is more interested in secondary destinations. Is that really happening? Are you noticing that? That instead of going to Paris, maybe we go to Beaune or some other remarkable place that isn't Paris, or is it or is that just more talk?
So no, it's not more talk. So all the planners we talk to right now, cost is a concern. So when cost is a concern, you look for destinations that are a little more cost effective, and that's often second and third tier cities. So they definitely are having a moment because they're less expensive.
And did you say, when you said meetings are being compressed, and this is a question for all of you, does that mean also that instead of doing 3 days, they may be doing 2 days now and trying to be more efficient? Did you mean that, or am I putting?
Absolutely. If it saves money for the company right now, like I said, one of the number one concerns is cost.
Melissa and Greg, what are you seeing on that? Is there more interest in exploring secondary destinations or going
Yeah.
outside of Miami or going outside of New York,
Sure. And I
etc.?
think that's driven, yes, sometimes by cost for sure, because from a value standpoint, but also from a much more experienced traveler, right? So you had all of that rage revenge travel there for a little bit. So speaking of Paris, it's now like the south of France and Monaco or Marrakesh, right? Or Central Europe, right? So it's still looking at different cities, not just only for cost, but also for a more experienced traveler
And
sometimes.
circling back to what we talked about, you could get authentic experiences in less traveled destinations.
Greg, what are you seeing on that score?
Pretty much the same thing. The one thing that I think we're on the verge of are even more unique destinations as a result of our younger generations and their appetite for social media are beginning to see things that aren't as common, and they're going to want to go there.
Yeah. We're starting to call it the White Lotus effect too.
Yeah.
Lots of interest in Asia, suddenly Japan and Thailand and
Yeah.
Talk about saving money on budgets. So anyway, we're getting toward the end here, but Marc, are you seeing that? Look, you have an interesting database in a sense, Marc, because what happens in Marc's business, folks, is that it's gift certificates, right? And people can go into a catalog and choose at that tier, what do they get? And they could pick New York, they could pick Miami, or they could pick Catalina Island outside of LA, which, a lot of people have never been to, even though it's just 20 miles from LA. Are you seeing that in redemptions, Marc? Or is it still mostly for the famous bucket list things?
No, it's always the unique things. I take off next week for 3 weeks in Slovenia and Croatia to do some exploratory things. You can all feel sorry for me if you like. But
we'll keep
I mean, that's the type of destinations that we're looking to build new experiences in. And Melissa made the reference about the south of France. Well, absolutely. And even in destinations like France and England and places like that, our experiences are based in manor houses and castles, not hotels. So they might be going to Paris, but they'll go outside of Paris and stay in a country estate. So those type of things that really make the experience unique and different. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we've been focusing on. That's what we've been always specializing in.
Well, now here's one last actually, we're right at the top of the hour, but I'm going to give you quick questions. And this is really only for Greg and Melissa and Andrea. I don't think Jaki and Marc would be in the same position in your businesses. Metrics and measurement. I have always felt, and I've been in the industry longer than any of you guys because I'm older than you, that the lack of measurement is pretty staggering. That the companies who believe in them just do these programs. They don't need to be convinced. They know. They've been to the event. They know it works. And maybe they'll do a survey. Did everybody like it? Did they like the food? Was the service good? But in terms of getting back to what Melissa's talked about, okay, what did we want them to feel? What did we want them to do? And did they do it? Are you guys seeing more interest in more serious metrics, Greg, in terms of did we fulfill the purpose of this meeting? Or is it still, if I'm a believer, I don't really care. And if I'm not a believer, I don't do it. You're in mute.
I think everybody always talks about measurement. I don't think anybody does it exceptionally well. I think one of the things that we need to do, perhaps as an industry, is look at it as more of a continuum from kind of a cost management mindset to a strategic asset mindset, and really begin to identify the buckets of measurement that we want. Certainly, we can do financial measurement, we can do satisfaction, we can do experience, we can do preference, we can do all the way up to transformation. But I think we need to start developing a very specific language that includes a continuum mindset versus just one or two. But it is a continuum of measurement from my perspective.
So would you say in general that we're moving toward more measurement, but we're really not where we could be? Or not even?
Not where we could be.
That's the polite answer. What do you say, Melissa?
I would agree with all of that. It is because on the far end of the continuum, it's been budget and PAC satisfaction that's really driven from the inception. But now we're looking at things exactly like we've been talking about here. Are people doing the things after the event? Did they feel something from the event? And we actually have more biometrics and things like that we can even start bringing to the party. So as the data and the technology advance as well, we'll have better opportunity to capture how we're impacting the humans with the experiences we create.
So
Totally.
Andrea, what's your take on that?
I
Is there a
agree.
greater push toward metrics?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I love the company that puts the cameras up throughout the trade show floor to see how
Mhm.
people are feeling. And then like at the puppy area, you know, everyone's happiness level rises. So there, yeah, it's good. And
That's a
I
great
also
idea.
do find of interest CES. They do such an elaborate audit at the end of their trade show every year that I think planners can learn from that.
Yeah, very cool.
All right, well, one
I'll
last
just
question
say
to
that
close.
for individual travel, our ability to measure is somewhat reduced, but we have surveys. We send out surveys after everybody travels. Hey, how was it? Did you have a good time? How was your experience? So we do get that feedback, and we're able to provide that reporting back to our clients.
Well, Mark, you also have the advantage. You have that tiered program for sales where the guys, the ladies don't even get the trip unless they reach their sales target. So that is good measurement, obviously. And Melissa and Greg, I'm sure your programs that are sales oriented, the channel programs are more measurable because they wouldn't be
Yeah,
there
you
on
have the
the.
Yeah,
lift from additional sales, right?
But,
absolutely.
but, but we still don't know whether that event moved them. And I love that I'm careful of being a New Yorker to say the F word because it could easily be interpreted another way. But all of you were talking about feeling, and that is very important. So my last question. Um, we're obviously in an uncertain time. What effect is this having on meetings businesses right now? What I'm hearing, but I want to get your viewpoints, is that A, people are very cost conscious right now. And if it's an international meeting, that's an all animal by itself, obviously. But domestic meetings, I'm hearing that companies are being more cost conscious. Some are putting incentive programs on hold in certain industries until they find out what the tariffs are going to be, et cetera, et cetera. So just quickly, Andrea, and each one of you, have you seen any effects yet from all this uncertainty in your meetings business?
I mean, it really depends what segment of the meetings industry you're in. Like government meetings, they've been decimated. Association meetings are feeling the impact. So corporate, so it depends. But yeah, definitely there is, you know, politics are playing a huge role in meetings. And really even they're booking their meetings even more last minute, just waiting to see how everything pans out.
So associations are being affected that maybe fewer people are attending.
Absolutely.
Melissa, what are you seeing?
Yeah, association meetings are being impacted a great deal more than the business side from a business perspective, events perspective. Status quo, unless you have a large number coming of outside US coming into the US, then there's some impact, but not dramatic. And then it's booking further in the future if we have looking at different locations sometimes, but generally overall, from a price standpoint, a little bit of wait and see for programs in the fall, but no dramatic impact on the business event side so far.
Greg.
Yeah, what Melissa said, I think we're probably experiencing exactly the same thing. The one thing that I find interesting is that I've been having conversations with planners and event meeting designers on how to design in uncertain times, which I think is an interesting topic to perhaps explore. What do you do? You know, how do you prepare and ready yourself?
Well, that's a whole nother subject, and I'm not going
That's a
to.
great story idea. Thank you.
Yeah, Greg, you threw that at a great time. Jackie, how about you? Are you seeing any impact? Vegas is this center of
I work in
international
Vegas and
events.
I'm actually doing speakers in Lisbon, Portugal in November, which is an offsite place. I'm finding that, you know, in Vegas that there's people still spending a lot of money. And then I have people that are calling me that are major companies that are like, you know, I only want to spend $3,500 for that $6,500 band I had. And I think, and I'm not just speaking for myself, you have to go to your vendors and tell them, this is what my budget is. I don't want to cut the experience. I want to keep the experience, but you need to go and talk to them, whether it's a speaker or an entertainer, and say, this is what my budget is. I know I'll go to I'm going to use Marilyn Sherman as an example. I had a client that only had a $7,500 budget. I have a $25,000 speaker that lives here. What are you doing this date? Are you working? Do you want to make a couple bucks? Do you want to create a relationship with this company? Maybe next year they'll have more money. And she did. And I mean, it's all about working with your clients, having a relationship. And I know, Andrea, you see that all the time when you're out at these meetings. It's like, and the creative, you don't want to cut the creative, but maybe get more creative if the budget cuts.
But that's why, someone like you that has relationships, because if someone else called, I don't know if Marilyn would have done that. But you have a relationship with her, and I guess something is better than nothing. So she said yes. That's interesting.
I think it's not all about making a quick buck. It's about having a long relationship with people. I know some of my clients I'm with for 20 years. I just
And
think
you
that
go through
people in
the
this
ups
day
and
and
downs.
age- people in this day and age, they need to know that, that business is not as usual, and we need to work with our clients and work with their budgets.
So,
So
Marc, you're going to get the last word. You're in the individual travel area, which has always been a little counter cyclical. You did very well during COVID, if I recall. So how are you seeing it? Are you seeing maybe an uptick? Maybe companies are cutting back on group and doing more individual. What are you seeing?
Well, we are seeing quite a bit of that because people earn the trip, they earn the award, they have to do something. And by pivoting to individual travel, it's easier for the corporation. They're handing the award to the individual. The individual has 2 years to travel. So whatever's happening today or this week or this month or next month is really immaterial because the people have so long to travel. And during pandemic, where people couldn't travel, we extended the life cycle of our travel experiences to 36 months, in some cases even 48 months, to really allow those individuals to travel who couldn't travel. So I think we have a reputation in the workplace for that flexibility, and we are definitely seeing an uptake in these uncertain times.
Well, anyway, folks, thank you so much. There's a lot of meat here, a lot of headlines here. Greg and Melissa and Jackie and Marc and Andrea, I cannot thank you enough for your generosity of your time. And you've really given me an idea. There's really, there's a need for a couple of more shows on the subject. And one of them would be to drill down more specifically. How can we really rethink these formats and get more specific? So I may be following up with some of you about that later on. But once again, folks, this will be live on YouTube next week. There'll be a feature article on RRN, so you won't have to watch the YouTube if you don't want to watch it, but you're going to get all the great wisdom that we've got here. So thank you very much for your time today, folks.
thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
everybody. Happy
Yeah.
Memorial
Bye-bye.
Day.